wale ndege wasopanda wala kuvuna. Na tena huwa thamani kuliko na maua ya kondeni. Usifadhaike mteulewe, majaribu na maonjo kila upande. Umedharauliwa na kusemwa semwa we, hata imani yako yadidimia. Asema anafahamu wewe una nguvu ndogo, lakini umesimama. Na tena yuko nawe hadi mwisho wa dahari, kwa hivyo usifadhaike. Usifadhaike o mjane we, mliyeishi naye amekuacha, na watoto wako sasa ni hatimaye, marafiki na jamii wametoroka. Asema anasikia sauti ya mjane amwitapo. Usisahau. Na tena yeye ni baba wa yatima wote. Usifadhaike. Sikia. Unalia nini ndugu yangu we? Kodi ya nyumba huna na kazi huna, na watoto wako hawana karo, hata huko shuleni wamefukuzwa. Anasema wewe ni wa maana sana kuliko vyote. Usisahau. Na tena umeandikwa kwa kiganja chake. Usifadhaike. Usijaribu kufadhaika. Usifadhaike. Yeye anahesabu ya nywele zako. Usifadhaike. Ukifadhaika utakonda. Usifadhaike. Kaka yangu we. Usifadhaike. Yeye anajua kesho. Usifadhaike. Usifadhaike mami. Usifadhaike. Mtoto usifadhaike. Usifadhaike. Hizi ni ahadi zake. Usifadhaike. Uliza kitu. Uncle Fred Machoka, nasikiaje? Titi na Gwala, mtoto wa kwetu. John Maloba, Baba Nasty, kula rumba ya Yesu. Sasa chuna kitu, wambie watu wasifadhaike hata kidogo. Rebra Douglas Jiveti, Apupa James, usifadhaike baba. Marshal Deni Wampayo, Yoka Makambo anashughulika. Sheri Nangai Julie Alivisa, Shalom endelea kufundisha batoto ba Mungu.
Welcome, this beautiful evening. My name is Bet Masai, and we're here to have a beautiful and an amazing life experience. Today's topic is reconciling the divided nation, and we're here joined by an amazing personnel in this country. I'm talking about a gospel artist, a father, a teacher, a speaker, a broadcast journalist, and also a social social activist, and also recent presidential aspirant. I'm talking about the man of God who is interested more in good governance, peace, and unity. I'm talking about Reuben Kigame. As we are going to start this discussion, and before that, Reuben Kigame has just shared that the recent election that has just ended, he was part of the aspirants. The IBC knocked him out despite the fact that the High Court ruled that he is supposed to take part in the elections as the president of Kenya, the 5th president. But he says that he has forgiven them and is ready to move on and to continue building this nation. Today's topic, we're going to look at how our nation is divided, and people are hurt, and people are living in distress these times of. And we're going to share with him. He's going to tell us more about it, and he's also going to interact more. Make sure you share your comments. Make sure you invite those who are they have not yet known that we are here. Make sure that you invite a friend and tell a friend to tell a friend, and they'll share your comments, share your questions, and you're going to read them here. And without further ado, let me introduce to you the man of God. We call him Papa Reuben Kigame. Welcome.
Thank you so much, Bet Masai, for this opportunity to be able to pour my heart to a very hurting nation. I'm talking to Kenyans within the 254, that is within our borders, right here in East Africa, but I know that there are also Kenyans in the diaspora that love home, love this country with all their hearts, and they are concerned about where we've come from as a nation and where we are going. And so my topic is reconciling a divided nation. Reconciling a divided nation. As soon as I put this topic out, I got a lot of comments on social media, on Facebook, in particular, people saying, Reuben, why talk about a divided nation? We are not divided. We are united. We're moving forward. You're living in denial. Everything is okay. I want to tell you, and to tell everybody who wrote that kind of comment, that you must be living in denial. You must be living in utopia. You're living in a world of your own. Because if you live in Kenya, or if you are from Kenya, you know that the just concluded election really, took us from a place where we were united to a place of dividing us, so that we are no longer really going the same direction. Beginning with just how we voted, about 7 million voted for the president that took over leadership, President William Samoei Arap Ruto. Now, about another 7 million voted for former Prime Minister Raila Amolo Odinga and the Azimio coalition. Now, out of the 22 million Kenyans that were registered to vote in this year's election, more than 8 million did not vote for either William Samoei Ruto or Raila Amolo Odinga. They saw no reason for voting. Some of them said, I did not have an option. In fact, I want to put it on record that quite a number of those who did not vote said to me that if you are not on the ballot, I am not going to vote. I'm not going to vote at all. So I'm not saying that all the 8 million plus who did not vote for me, who did not vote were therefore not supposed to vote for me. That's not what I'm saying. But I wouldn't also be surprised if a big chunk of them were going to vote for me because they didn't see any option of voting, especially the options that were there, the 4 of them. Now, there are those of my friends that decided they were either going to vote for William Ruto or vote for Raila Amolo Odinga because I was not on the ballot and they needed to vote for somebody anyway. Now, there are also some of those that voted for, Bwana Wajakoya, as well as those who voted for Bwana Mwaure. Very sad that we did not have a female candidate. But that be as it may, the nation right there was divided. It was divided in a way that as soon as the winner was announced, we had a lot of people who were wounded. Now, if you still think that Kenya is not divided, that I'm putting this topic out just to pass time, I need to tell you that as a minister of the gospel, as a musician, as a father, as someone who relates very actively with youth, with persons living with disability, with people in civil society, and journalists and so on, I have talked and counseled with so many that are deeply wounded, absolutely hurting. Their hearts are falling apart. They're breaking because their candidate did not win. Now, as if that is not enough, those who won, or those who are on the side of the winner, came up and said, guys, just accept and move on. Just, don't, There is a winner, there is a loser, you lost, so move on. Now, if you had put all your hopes on a particular candidate, definitely you're going to be wounded. Now, I have also counseled with some people who have been offended by the way the church in particular, a section of the church, has defined the win of William Samoei Ruto as the win of God, and therefore anybody who did not support him has been classified as someone not belonging to God. In fact, last week I spoke to somebody who does not know when or where to go to church anymore, because the pastors in that particular church are basically telling them that they did not hear from God well. In other words, if your candidate won, therefore you heard from God. If he didn't win, you didn't hear from God. What is even worse, within the church circles, we've had prophecy after prophecy. So one person says this particular candidate will win. Another one says this particular candidate will win. In the end, this one wins or this one wins. The issue is the other one a false prophet? So false prophecies or predictions and so on have divided the church as well. And then there is the tribal element. Some communities feel our man has won. Others feel, our people lost. And so at the end of the day, this nation is divided and people are hurting. In fact, if you don't know, there are thousands and thousands of people that have been flocking IEBC, trying to go to the website or to trying to dial the numbers we were given before elections, basically telling IEBC, remove me from the register. If that is not pain enough, if that is not something of a divided nation, then tell me what is. And if you still feel that everybody should move on and forget everything and just, take up whatever is there, I want to tell you this. Without reconciliation, without healing, without dealing with the reasons as to why some people feel disenfranchised, we are going to have a divided nation. And time has come for us to be able to speak the truth to one another. Because even the very truth that we vow to speak, even in courts, have come to a point where some people are feeling even the courts let us down. Now, what do you do to somebody? Everybody is entitled to their belief and conviction. So if I feel disenfranchised, how do you force me or how do you push me to accept that I'm not disenfranchised? So we have a divided nation. Kenya is hurting. And yes, we have a new government and we have respect for the new government. Yes, we have a cabinet now in place and they are the people that are going to be leading us in government. We have governors, senators, women reps, MPs, MCAs all over the place in the national government as well as in the devolved units. But I want to tell you this, that out there are also people that believed they should be in government but did not end up there. Some of them were smoked out during the party nominations and they are wounded. Some lost because of fraud in the electoral process. Some lost because, they were shortchanged. You win and then the certificate is given to somebody else. And there are tons and tons of cases in court today disputing elections. So how can you tell me the nation is not divided, the nation is not wounded? But the fact that the nation is wounded or not wounded is not the important thing now. The important thing is, how do we come together as a nation and experience the healing that we so badly need? We all need healing. And to be able to attain that healing, we first of all have to accept the problem that we are wounded. If we don't accept, we cannot heal from where we are. If we live in denial that we are united, that everything is okay, we will be lying to one another. We'll be lying to ourselves. And so I'm here to say the first step actually in healing a nation that is this divided is to accept that we have a problem, that we've been through, a moment of betrayal, a moment of, division. We need to accept it. Then we can be able to attend to the problem. If we live in denial, we will never be able to attend to the problem. So I, for one, have accepted, and I am sure so many listening to me tonight agree with me that Kenya is divided. And so we need unity. We need to be brought together. We need that healing. We need that restoration. And hence, tonight, my focus on reconciling a divided nation. Our nation is divided. And to reconcile, we need to come together and think together. As Isaiah would say, come now, let us reason together. Now, we need to understand what reconciliation is. In order for us to actually even reconcile, we need to know what is it. Reconciliation is really, simply put, healing broken relationships or restoring relationships where they have been broken. It's bringing two sides that are divided together. Reconciling is making one, bringing many into one, bringing into unity, oneness. Now, it is solidarity. It's moving together, reconciling from places where we've been going our own way. Isaiah puts it well. All we like sheep have gone astray. We have turned everyone to his own way. But God, laid upon Christ the iniquity of us all, so he reconciled us to himself. Now, we need reconciliation as a nation with regard to not just the election, but perennial problems that we have inherited from previous governments, from the colonial era, and so on and so forth. And so tonight, I would like to look at about 6 different areas of reconciliation and then briefly talk about how we can reconcile with one another. The first area of reconciliation that we need as a country is the reconciliation of conscience. The reconciliation of conscience. Our hearts, our minds being reconciled with ourselves. You see, when you have an inward struggle, when one part of you is saying, move this way, and another part is saying, move this way, you cannot have peace with yourself. And so we need reconciliation of conscience. And right here, to be reconciled at the level of conscience, we need to tell ourselves the truth, and we need to tell each other the truth. If we don't tell one another the truth, we cannot be reconciled at the level of conscience. We need honesty. We need to be vulnerable with one another and accept a problem where there is. When it comes to elections, for example, there is no way we can move on with our consciences, knowing certain things that took place have been called good or acceptable, and some things that were supposed to take place did not take place. Let me simplify this. For example, if we know that EACC gave IEBC a list of 241 candidates that were to be excluded from the election, and IEBC did little to deal with, the vetting of the 241. My brothers and sisters, mothers and fathers, friends listening to me, as long as we know that something was done by EACC, that there was a concern raised by EACC to be able to deal with the issue of values, the issue of ethics or morals of our candidates, and we ignored to look at who was running for office. My friends, we can wish everything away. We can say, let's move on. But I can tell you the truth, that at the end of the day, it will come back to us and haunt us. So our conscience implies peace if we can actually deal with that. You know, there are people who believe they won, you know, because they actually ran the race, they counted their votes, and then they were shortchanged. Until that is dealt with, no matter how much you tell somebody to move on, they'll not be able to move on. So the reconciliation at the level of conscience is something that goes hand in hand with justice, with truth, with honesty or sincerity. And Jesus put it very well. You will know the truth, and the truth will set you free. If you run away from the truth, it will never set us free. And so whether we are dealing with the executive and taking over administration, or we're dealing with Parliament coming to represent us at the legislature, or we're dealing with the judiciary, as long as we don't deal with our conscience, we will have a problem. So, for example, let me just take the example of parliamentarians that have just had their induction. You have issues of conflict that we cannot deal with as the public. For example, when we say we are inheriting empty coffers, that our country has no money whatsoever. So we don't understand how Parliament can go at Safari Park or to Naivasha and spend 1 week at a resort, paying money every day, paying for food, 3 or 4 meals. I don't know how many they're taking, perhaps even cocktails and stuff. How many of them? Hundreds of them. For 5 or 6 days. I don't know how many. I lost count. Now, who is paying for that? We are not, in our minds, in our hearts of hearts, we are wondering, where are we getting the money if we are broke? And at the same time, if the first agenda of parliamentarians is going to be increasing their salaries or redeeming their allowances, that's the first agenda on the table. As people that you represent, the first question we want to ask is, do we then actually have an economic problem? We cannot reconcile certain things. Conscience hurts when it's not at peace with itself. And if we're going to move on as a country, let's stop assuming that Kenyans, whether here or in the diaspora, are so naive or so blind or so lost or so foolish as not to know when they are being taken for a ride. That is why peace with conscience is so key. But that is not all. We need to also reconcile at the level of our relationship with God. You know, a lot of us imagine that we can take leave of God because we read a few books at the university, or somebody sent us a forward that made us take leave of God. But as long as you have a birthday, as long as you fear dying, as long as you remember, carrying your child in nappies or diapers, we call them, then you know we are so dependent. We did not bring ourselves here. We are products of our parents. We have been born by our parents, and we will give birth to children and die. We are finite. There is no way we can imagine as human beings we are so independent. And whether we're dealing with country, or we're dealing with family, or we're dealing with our individual lives, I must tell you, unless we make peace with God, unless we reconcile with God, there is no way we can go on in this life as if this life belongs to us. And so there is need, even when we mention God, to have a level of fear or reverence that stops us from either lying to people in the name of God or taking advantage of them in the name of God. That is why I would say, when it comes to the just concluded elections, if you work with the IEBC, or you work with the judiciary, or you work with any organ of state, the executive, a political party, name it, the truth of the matter is that if you have lied to citizens, even in the name of God, you know it. So you move from conscience to the point where eventually you have to deal with God. If you stole an election, you can get away with it. You can. Maybe some of you have actually gotten away with stealing an election. But you know what? You can never get away with that before God, who saw how you stole the election. You know that. So you can lie to us. You can fool us. You can even look sanctimonious. You can look religious or whatever. But if things are not right with God, forget it. Forget it. And I usually say, you are better off lying to me than lying to God. And as a nation, we have to come to a point where, for example, if those of us that went to court to give evidence know that we cooked the evidence, you can fool us, maybe even fool the courts, I don't know. But you cannot fool God. And we need to reconcile with God. Kenyans, sometimes I think we play dangerous games, assuming that we are so smart, we will fool our families, fool our communities, fool the nation, and you even think you will fool God in the end. And so we know that things are not right. That's why we are where we are as a nation. In fact, why did we need an election if everything was so good with the previous leaders? Some of us have kicked them out. So the point is, not everything is okay. So we need peace with God. We need to reconcile with God as well. And it's not just about, feeling good, singing a song here or there, or making a so-called prayer, or calling people to pray for you. No. It is you and your Maker. You need to be reconciled with Him. And as a country, we are going down because I think we have begun to think that God is a buddy, is a friend, that we can just sort of play draft or monopoly with. Tell you what, when He rises to act, you'll be sorry that you did or imagined or behaved the way you did. So whether you are in Kenya Kwanza, or you are in Azimio, or you are in my Jengam Kenya team, and it's in your habit to lie, to play games with God, one of these days, tell you what, you'll face Him. You'll face Him. Now, there is a third area we need to reconcile, and that is the area of family. A lot of us, when it comes to politics, neglect our families. Families become irrelevant. Some of us took away from our wives or our children, and because of politics, we burnt bridges, maybe even called them names and broke relationships and so on. It is time for us to reconcile. Because, at the end of the day, should you go through a really bad scenario in life, the people that are going to stick with you are mostly family members. You can, ascend the ladder in your profession. You can go to the highest rank. But when it's time to die, it's not so much your friends that will be close to you. It's not so much, the people you play golf with that will be with you. It is your family. And so if politics made you, break relationships, call your people names, broke ranks, whatever it is, I think it is important for you to reconcile. It is important to reconcile. I come from the Banyore community, and the Banyores say something like this, Obukundu bwenyanga bene, which means that the stench of a corpse can only be borne by family members. And so if you are imagining that you can just throw away family, I want to tell you this, you'll need them. And by the way, if you are a criminal, you can be a criminal in the face of the whole world, but you'll find that your mother will still say, that's my son, that's my daughter. Family bonds are important. If you broke ranks with your husband, broke ranks with your wife or children or relatives, I think it is good to reconcile. Now, so we have conscience, we have God, we have family to reconcile with. And now the fourth area is reconciliation within political parties. Although politics is played at the level of party to party or coalition to coalition, even within the same parties, there are issues. Some people within parties are hurting so much because they were shortchanged at the nomination process. Yes, you promised them a ticket, then you reneged on it. Some things are happening. You told people things, then you untold them. So it is so important for us to go back there and mend relationships at party levels. And Kenyans, I think we need to know that, especially in this country, parties don't actually hold together. Parties collapse so often. And so I do want to, of course, emphasize that you don't have to put so much trust in parties. But in terms of party dynamics, whatever has happened to break relationships, I think it's a good night to go back there and mend. Call them. If you're the party leader, call those who vied. Make peace. Make tea for them. Give them an opportunity to vent and listen to them and reconcile whatever you